Hey guys, it's Adam from Lucipixel and welcome back. Now I have a question for you. Are you the type of artist that gets 15 minutes into a painting and then you drop it because you just don't feel you're going anywhere with it? Are you the type of artist who produces 5 or 6 works of art and may or may not feel confident showing even one of them publicly? Are you the type of artist that can find yourself so crippled with self-doubt that it really holds you back from growing, from learning, from sharing, from connecting with other people? Well, here's the crazy thing. Most artists feel exactly the way you do. But you might feel like you're one of the only ones. It's amazing how we as artists very often feel like the anomaly. We feel like the black sheep, that we don't belong. We feel like we're the outcasts. We're one of the few. When in reality, it's most of us that actually feel the way you do. I have a YouTube channel. You're watching me paint. But I feel that way every single day. Do I share the fact that I feel that way? Well, I am today because when you're a person in my position, being a teacher, being a YouTuber, being somebody who a lot of people reach out to, you hear this from a lot of different people. And people reach out to me very often for feedback and help and advice, when in reality, what they're doing is they're offering me some peace of mind. They're telling me, hey, I feel this way. Can you help me? And my response is, hey, I feel that way too. Why don't we help each other? So that's what I want to do today. The first thing I want to let you know is that you are definitely not alone. But there's more to this. And this is something that in my age, I'm starting to learn more and more of. And I was watching the other day, one of my personal favorite TED Talks. In fact, one of the most famous TED Talks of all time. It's one called How Schools Kill Creativity by Ken Robinson. A very charming, very funny guy, but very passionate and incredibly fascinating to listen to. But most of all, very true. He's very right about his opinions. Now, he's an academic. He's a teacher. I was listening to his talk. I was sharing it with a friend of mine because we were talking about our kids and about how they learn and all that kind of stuff. And it sparked my interest in watching that again. But he said something in it, particularly since a lot of his talk was about, quote, creativity, not necessarily about art specifically, but about creativity. And he was talking about how we are trained through our society to fear failure. That failure in our society is very stigmatized, meaning it's looked down upon. And this is so incredibly true that I listen to artists, or I have, fellow artists and friends and students that share themselves with me. And what prevented them from getting any work done that week was their fear of screwing up. And I very often find it ironic, not all the time, but very often, that these artists that have struggled with this reality, that have struggled to produce something, that are so hard on themselves, are very often my most talented and experienced artists. Mine as in my students. And when I witness professionals, I tend to notice one common strength. The artists that stand out from the bunch, they all have a common strength, and that is their ability to handle failure. A perfect example is a concert I went to just last night. It was one of my personal favorite singers of all time, musicians and singers, Rufus Wainwright, and he did a concert in Montreal. I took my girlfriend and my daughter to go check him out. It was their Christmas gift. And, Rufus himself is a magical human being. He's authentic, he's beautiful, his voice is honest to God angelic. If you ever get a chance to see him live, holy shit. I mean, he opens his mouth and 5 seconds later you've got tears streaming down your face. He's just a beautiful, beautiful person and a beautiful musician. But the concert was not what we expected it to be, because when I originally purchased the tickets, it was marketed as a, quote, Rufus Wainwright concert. There's his face with his new beard, his new gray beard, and in a tux, and it's him. But 48 hours before the actual show was launched, it was announced as, the name of it was Complainte de Catherine, which is Complaint of Catherine. And I realized that it was some kind of tribute to this person named Catherine, who I realized I believe is his mother. But on stage, when he actually showed up and got on stage, it was him and who I believe was his extended family, or a lot of members of his family, that were doing a tribute to his mother, which is wonderful. It's fantastic. But the problem was, he only performed about 40% of the show. He spent the majority of it sitting in the back while other people performed. And on top of that, the singers that he performed with, particularly tonight, didn't seem very organized. They were really kind of making a mess of the show. They were stopping songs because somebody's guitar was out of tune, or they would forget the lyrics and have to start over again. Rufus would come on and he would sing the songs. This is a guy who's a world famous, celebrated artist. I mean, he's at his pinnacle of fame right now, and he's on stage with, quite frankly, a bunch of amateurs. They were singing, their pitch of their voices were too loud and too quiet at certain points, and it was a real kind of a mess of it. It got really cringy at a certain point. But every time Rufus stood up and stood at the microphone and sang, magic happened. Furthermore, this is a man who is very well refined. He's very professional. He knows every word in every song. He studies and practices every different shift in the tone and the music and the rhythm and the feeling. He really, really practices. You can tell how professional this guy is. But I'm looking at how well he's handling and how well he's navigating around this embarrassment. He's on stage, and the performance that people came and paid a lot of money to go see is kind of falling apart. But he's handling it so well. He would crack a little joke. He would show his calm. He would adapt himself. He would be patient with everybody. He didn't lose his shit and bark orders at people. He came on stage and he was very, very gentle with people, and he's very kind about their lack of experience. And it was in that calmness and that acceptance of failure that coaxed everybody and calmed the waters, that reduced this intense professional expectation and allowed everybody to just treat it more as a family affair and allow people to just have fun and enjoy it. So when people screwed up and when grandma kind of lost her footing, she'd turn around and go, "Did you remember the guitar pick?" "Uh-huh, I got it here." And everybody would just laugh. And we ended up having a really good time as a result of it. But what if Rufus, the seasoned professional, got annoyed? What if he lost his cool with somebody, even quietly? What if he said, "Get your shit together"? What if he said something like that and we heard it through the microphone? That show of disappointment, that show of a lack of adaptability to the situation would have come at the cost of the show, and people would have walked out of there very upset. But he set the tone and said, "It's okay." And he said, even at the beginning when people were kind of screwing up and starting songs over, he goes, "It's fine. That's the kind of atmosphere. We're all relaxed. We're dressed." He kind of had this artist frock type of shirt, this white shirt. And he says, "See, we're all artists here. It's just, we're all just hanging out, and everything's very calm and relaxed." And he set a tone and adapted very gracefully. it made me love him all the more. And it made me love his music all the more. And even though that concert was a bit of a mess, arguably, when we got back in the car, me and my daughter and my girlfriend, when we got back in the car, we put Rufus Wainwright music on the stereo and we sang his songs out loud all the way home and celebrated that time together. And when we listened to his voice singing, we didn't only have a newfound respect for his talent, but we had a newfound affection for him as a person. It was, in essence, his ability to handle failure that made him so relatable. It made him so cared for. But he didn't get there. He didn't reach that point by being flawless. He reached that point because he's probably done 1 million rehearsals, and he's had to deal with a lot of hardships, and he's had to deal with a lot of fussy, negative partners who he knew he had another 20 tour dates with, and he knew he would have to settle with this person, and he had to learn how to create a happy, productive, accepting, flexible, relaxed work environment for him and the people he worked with. And he set a climate. That, to me, was a sign of a true leader, somebody who knew how to keep his calm under great pressure when there's 6,000-7,000 people looking at him expecting him to perform. And he did. Every single time he opened his mouth, it was hypnotic. He really was hypnotic. So if you ever get a chance to see him live, definitely go check it out. Now, how does this relate to you artistically? What it means is accept flaw. Embrace flaw. Understand the fact that you're not a machine. You're a human being. You're somebody who's trying to balance so many intricate things to create something so fluid. You are not only somebody who has to master the brain like a mathematician. You're not only somebody who has to control large amounts of complex information, light and value and composition and texture and flow and anatomy and visual storytelling and set design and perspective and volume and you name it. But you have to do so in an emotional way to capture feelings and colors and moods and lights that are evocative. They're not just practical, they're evocative. They make you feel something. But you're also somebody who has to connect with other people and find a means to turn your art into a performance, a way of getting other people to feel things. You have a huge responsibility. Giving yourself 15 minutes to achieve that is stupid. It's wrong, and you're lying to yourself in thinking that you can do that. But when you do look at artists that can pull off incredible things in short periods of time, what you might not realize is that they've learned in a brilliant way how to integrate their flaw into their method. When I did my Ascension painting, I mentioned it in my last talk as well, in my book review. I started the drawing using a straight ahead type of drawing technique. If you want to know what I'm talking about, you can watch the beginning of my Ascension part 1. In that drawing process, in order for me to draw that way, I have to have a strong understanding and grasp of the technicalities, but I have to let that go and allow my own unpredictability to play into the process. And I found that over the years, my desire to create flawless, methodical, technically sharp drawings lacked soul, lacked spontaneity, and very often in the process of trying to think of something, trying to fathom something in my mind and then execute that in a drawing, something got lost in translation, and I realized it was my desire to create these perfect shapes. And when I abandoned the perfect shape and created organic, living, moving shapes, all of a sudden I realized that my true expression started to seep into my work a lot more fluidly, a lot more enjoyably. I was far more satisfied with what it was I was drawing. But it's a balance of many different technical things. It's taken time. It didn't happen overnight. But these were discoveries I had to make along the way. And those discoveries were made through countless thousands and thousands and thousands of mistakes. I don't see mistakes as flaws. I see mistakes as building blocks, as stepping stones to creation. They are not the occupational hazard of being an artist. I want you to wipe that clean from your mind. They are essential to becoming a great artist. You need to have a professional embrace of failure if you ever want to create anything of value. This brings us back to Ken Robbins' TED Talk. He was talking about children doing a play. And one of them had screwed up his line. Instead of saying frankincense, he said, Frank sent this. And everybody laughs. And everybody did laugh. But he said, well, that's the thing, isn't it? He didn't know. The kid was not sure. But he took a go at it. And he wasn't afraid of being judged for his failure. He took a shot at what he thought it was. And if it wasn't right, people laughed and he just went on with his life. He did not hang his head in shame and run off the stage crying and embarrassed because he screwed it up. Kids aren't afraid of failure. The problem is we learn to fear failure. In fact, we're trained into fearing failure. It's part of our culture. Failure is stigmatized. We're expected to be perfect. And it's through that perfection that we achieve greatness, which is absolutely bullshit. Because if you look at any truly successful person out there, they are people who have had to learn how to embrace failure. They're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It's their flaw, their quirks that lend themselves to their character. I remember listening to Stephen Fry, another one of my favorite human beings on earth, the comedian and actor and writer and 1,000 other things. And he was talking about, somebody had asked him the question, what's the difference between American comedy or an American comedian and British comedy? And he said, in American comedy, everybody wants to be the hero, the clever guy, the sly guy, like Ace Ventura type of thing. In British comedy, everybody wants to be a loser, the outcast, Mr. Bean, right? Or Ricky Gervais, who is the most antisocial prick on earth who really can't be bothered to care if anybody is, quote, offended by what he says. He just has kind of given up on humanity. Or Jonathan Pye, who is the voice of reason in this world of sterilized, corrupt politics. He's the only guy out there that I actually relate to politically. But he's the guy who goes into a red-faced tirade, losing his shit over the stupidity of politicians. He generally references British comedians, British politics, but, the whole world's kind of in a bad state right now politically. But it's these people exploit and are celebrated for their flaw, for their temper, for their stupidity, for their goofiness, for their antisocial behavior. Don't we feel connected to those people? Don't we feel a certain warmth and comfort in their humanity? That's the beauty of flaw. And when you learn to embrace your flaw, you start to become something a lot richer, a lot more beautiful, a lot more thoughtful, a lot more connected, a lot more empathetic. And if you've drawn for even 2 days in your life, you'll know that every single one of those qualities that I just listed resonate into all of the greatest artwork you've ever seen, spanning across every genre of art you can imagine, from acting to singing to dance to art to cooking. It resonates in all of these different things. It's what fashions us, which forges us into great artistry. My sister, a singer, got on stage when she was at the beginning of her career. Tall woman, she's 5'10", so she towered quite high. And when she first started singing, she would sing in a bar she worked at, and she would stand, bracing herself straight on her microphone stand, and she'd hold onto the microphone stand And she'd look straight up at the TV she was looking at to kind of distract herself. She wouldn't even look at anybody on the stage. Stiff as a board, and the only thing that would move would be her finger tapping on the mic as she sang. Beautiful voice, but stiff as a board. And then one day, a while later, somebody came, got up on stage while she was singing, pulled the microphone off the stand, walked away with the stand, and handed her the microphone with just the cord. So she had nothing to support herself on. And the moment he did that, she laughed, and her shoulders dropped. And I think she made an important discovery. When you get up on that stage, if you fear being judged, you've already failed. Fast forward 5-10 years later, she could literally fall on her ass and get back up, and her voice would not even waver for a second. She would laugh it off and keep going. I witnessed, there's a viral video of Lady Gaga who's climbing down off of a piano as she's singing, and the piano chair gives out and she falls, rolls back underneath the piano, ass in the air, in front of millions of fans. Her voice didn't even falter. Her face didn't turn red. She didn't get embarrassed and apologize. She didn't cry. She just rolled back up, got up on her feet, and kept singing and never missed a beat. And you could see that it never mattered for 2 seconds to her how she was seen. She did not fear judgment. She feared nothing. She was there to perform and share her feelings with her audience. And as such, she didn't care, and nobody else did. She was loved even more, and her career never even hiccuped from that. In fact, it probably got better. So my advice to you is, have some compassion for yourself. Understand that you are a human being. You have feelings, you have experiences. You have muscles and bones and nerve endings and synapses in your brain that all have to be wired together to produce something. And that takes time. And it requires effort. And it requires you to let go of this illusion of perfection, because it is poisonous for an artist. It is toxic, and it is the opposite of what you need to focus on to become great. And as I move forward in my own career, I have to slowly chip away at my own ego to uncover the things about me that I truly value as well. So, hopefully, today's talk is helpful. Hopefully, it'll take a little bit of weight off of your shoulders as well. And of course, I love you with all my heart. And happy painting. Take care.